So, welcome back to another episode. And I've wanted to do this one for a long time, and it is my top 10 console strategy games. And I think I've mentioned a few times that I really love strategy games on consoles. I have for years, and I thought I'd do a top 10 list of my favorites. But I thought that I'd do it in a different type of way. That I would do my favorites, but in the order that I played them. So I can explain why they were important to me and why they were interesting. So obviously, guys, there's no definitive list on the internet of what is the top 10 console strategy games. These are just some picks that I've done for fun. Please tell me some of your picks down below. So I thought I'd just start off with my first one. And this is the first console strategy game that I ever played. And over here on the TurboGrafx, it was called Military Madness. And in Japan, it was called Nectaris. And it all took place on the moon, a battle for the moon. And this is the first time that I ever saw, moving my forces in a hexagon, pattern, almost like chess. And you had fighters and tanks, and I just thought this was totally different than I'd ever played. Usually, it was always an action type of game. But I would move my forces and then, go up to the enemy and then attack them like a chess game. And I could see my forces attack and see my percentages and how I was doing, terrain, stuff like that. It was totally novel to me. And I played this game for hours. It helped me get used to playing a strategy game because you really have to think a lot different. You have to be very careful where you position your troops and where you gamble, where you don't gamble, and stuff like that. And then I discovered the 2-player mode with my friend Swagger. And we became he had a copy at his house, and we became so good at the game. We would fight against each other all of the time. And we had this legendary battle where I decimated him so much that he had one troop left, which was in Military Madness is known as a Charlie. And I surrounded all of my forces around him to completely humiliate him. I never let him live that down. The next game I'm going to pick, number 9, is Warsong on the Genesis. Now, this is known as Langrisser in Japan, a very, very popular series of strategy games that were ported to nearly every system from the PC Engine onwards. It was quite wild how big Langrisser was, and this was the only game that we got over here. Now, different than Military Madness, this game was all about your commanders, relying on your commanders, picking your forces, and sending out your forces to attack. So in this game, commanders gain experience and can level up different classes through each scenario. During the game, you meet new commanders, but if any of your commanders die in battle, they're gone for good. This was a brand new concept for me, and one that drove me absolutely insane because I did not want any of my commanders to die. I got to the end of the game, and the only way I could do it was by sacrificing 2 of my commanders, and it just totally bummed me out. I became so attached to these characters. I'd gone through so many scenarios, and I was like, I can't bring you back because I can't do that battle again. I can't. And there was sometimes I couldn't do the battle without the commander dying at the very end of the game. I've never had a chance to talk about Warsong before, but in high school, this was the big strategy game for me. I played this every single night. I lost many, many hours of sleeping because of it. The next game is a favorite of mine. I'll class this as number 8. And I won't show it because Sega is such a bunch of fucking assholes about this series. They removed all of the Shining Force videos from YouTube. They removed quite a lot of them. So I will not show the game because of that fact, and I won't even show footage of it, but I will talk about the game, and I love the game. I was really lucky back in the day. A girlfriend of mine bought me a copy for my birthday, and it was just fantastic. And what I really liked about it was the graphics were so cartoony that it was kind of like Military Madness and Warsong. You moved around, around a hexagon map. But when your characters got into combat, boom, it looked like an anime. Your character moves up and attacks the monster, and it just looks fantastic. That was something that was like, holy cow at the time. I know nowadays it's a hard concept to wrap your head around, but honestly, back in the day, these battles were unbelievable looking. Now, also different is you don't have troops. You just have individual characters that can level up. What a lot of people don't know about is the creators were influenced by Dragon Quest when they created this game. Also, the music is especially good for the Genesis. Very, very catchy tunes that I have found myself listening to over the years. Definitely the battle theme and the overhead music. Just so catchy. Some great sequels came out, as in Shining Force 2, and there was also the CD games as well. And also over the years, there's been a lot of other Shining games that have really gone away from the strategy elements of the original series. But a true classic, absolutely. Now, the next game we didn't get right away. It was on the Super Famicom by Squaresoft, and that was Front Mission. And there was a Japanese mall by me, and I went there one day, and they had the soundtrack to the Super Famicom version of Front Mission, and I bought the soundtrack, and I listened to the soundtrack for years, and I really loved it, and I never got a chance to play the game until a friend of mine, my friend Andrew, he had a Game Doctor, and he had downloaded the Japanese ROM onto these little cards, and he loaded it up for me when he was visiting one time, and I got a chance to play Front Mission. And it's an overhead strategy game, but with mecha. And it was, at the time, the be-all, end-all mech game. Strategy game. Really something else. Character designs that are just unbelievable as well. But we didn't get this version of Front Mission until 2007 on the DS. We finally got a DS version, so if anybody's interested, you can pick this up, still out there. But strangely enough, the very first Front Mission game we ever got was back in 2000, and it was Front Mission 3 on the PlayStation 1. Highly recommend Front Mission. Next up is a Japanese exclusive that never came out here on the PC Engine, Macross Eternal Love Story. Now, this came out in 1992, but I never got a chance to play it until 1995. I'd come back from England. I went to a local anime store that I was, I used to visit quite a bit. And there they had this game, and I rented it. Can you believe it? I rented this game. It was really wild. Now, one thing I'll say about the game that is really cool, and to its credit, is that I was able to play quite a lot of this game. I was surprised. The menu system was as simple as Military Madness to me, so I could move my Valkyries around. And this is based on the anime Macross. And so you're up against the Zentradi forces in it, and you're using fighters that can transform into robots and Gurwalk mode and all that kinds of stuff, or Guardian mode. Very cool because I love Macross so much, and to hear the music was just fantastic. And the cinematics were awesome. This is at the time when CD disc space could hold these amazing cinematics for anime cutscenes, and this was a very big deal back in 1995, let me tell you. And what's another highlight moment is getting to the final battle and hearing Minmei's song play over and over as you trying to fight the final battle. That was a crazy one, I remember that. Next up is Vandal Hearts. This is just a favorite of mine. It is not the best strategy game ever created. It's very by the book. It's by Konami, but it definitely had an impact on me back then. Yeah, this was released in 1997. Vandal Hearts was a pretty average strategy game, but it changed it up a little bit by having to complete certain missions by killing or defending certain foes or allies. What excited me back then was not only was this a great strategy game, but it was made by Konami, and it had heavy politics and an interesting story. And it also did well enough to get a few sequels. Final Fantasy strategy games came together to create the ultimate game for me back then. Final Fantasy fucking Tactics. Fucking was in the middle of that, honestly. This game, I had been anticipating for so long, and I'll never forget Rob coming to meet me because I was really busy in the morning and he had the morning off, and he went, I gave him the money the night before, and he went to our local mall and he picked up this copy of Final Fantasy Tactics for me. And I came back and I was like, he gave it to me. I think we met at Burger King or something like that. And he gave it to me. And I'm like, oh my God, it was like the biggest deal in the world to have Final Fantasy Tactics. So a lot of character types are back, like the Black Mages and things like that. So It really was Final Fantasy characters in a strategy game, and at the time the graphics were unbelievable. They were so good. I spent so many hours leveling up my characters. But I'll tell you one thing about the game. The game drove me crazy. There's not many strategy games that really pushed me over the edge like Final Fantasy Tactics did. I remember playing 20 hours in and getting to this boss, and I couldn't exit out of the boss. I can't even remember now. But it just annihilated me. And I'm like, okay, I need to go and level up, but I couldn't. I remember trying to do the battle over and over and over again, using all of the characters I had, and none of it was enough. Oh, man. But anyways, Final Fantasy Tactics is unbelievable with, I haven't said this, a soundtrack that is timeless. This game came out in 1998, but the soundtrack is so incredible all these years later. If you're not interested in the game, listen to the soundtrack. Please do yourself that favor. Next up is Tactics Ogre, another game that was released in 1998, and I could not find it for the life of me. I really had to clear these shelves one time, but it's lost in the shuffle of things. But it was originally a Super Famicom game released in 1995. And that was a spiritual successor to the Ogre Battle franchise. The gameplay consists of moving characters around on a grid system in according to their individual stats and leveling up your classes. The game allows for many different story choices, and as such has multiple endings based on your decision through the game. The story is told in a series of pretty cool cutscenes. Also, the game remixes the Super Famicom music for some incredible scores that are very memorable. The game has become very hard to find, and is very expensive still on eBay. I think it's in the $70, $80 range nowadays. But there was also, for people who are interested in this kind of thing, there was a Queen song called Ogre Battle. Next up is the Advance Wars series that came out on the Game Boy Advance and on the DS. Now this series was originally Japan only, known as the Famicom Wars. The series debuted in 1988 on the Famicom, and later sequels came out on the Game Boy Advance, Super Famicom, and Game Boy Color. It was created by Intelligent Systems by Nintendo. In 2001, we finally got the series now known as Advance Wars on the Game Boy Advance. Yeah, and this was my first entry into the series, but it reminded me of Military Madness, so I jumped in and loved it. I love the cartoony look of it. I invited my friend Swagger over because I said, it's exactly like Military Madness. We played on that, and I just annihilated him as well. He was never happy about that. Now, here's a series I really, really love, and that is the Fire Emblem series. My first experience to the series was in 2003 on the Game Boy Advance, but the series started back in Japan on the Famicom in 1990 by Intelligent Systems. Same guys who did Advance Wars. Yeah, it's really known for its deep storyline and characters. I'm telling you, Fire Emblem pushed ahead for console medieval turn-based games. Yeah, your characters and troops can gain experience, level up, and then you can buy new weapons. And also, if your main character dies, they're gone for good, so it's a lot like Warsong in that way. As much as I loved the Game Boy Advance game, it really was Fire Emblem, Path of Radiance on the GameCube in 2005. This game cemented my love for Fire Emblem. I just thought it was the most awesome game I'd ever played, like strategy game. I really fell in love with the characters, the music, the whole storyline. It was really excellently done. And I've never liked a Fire Emblem game as much as I have Path of Radiance. Now the series is so big in Japan that Roy and Marth obviously made it into Smash Brothers, and that's a big reason why we ended up getting Fire Emblem. We're kind of lucky in that area, because I think a lot of people are like, who the hell are those characters? And they're like, yeah, we better bring this game over here. So great series. I love Fire Emblem. I'm looking forward to some of the future releases on consoles on the Nintendo Wii U. It should be very, very exciting. So wow, guys, so that is my top 10 console strategy games, and I gotta admit, I just looked here and I'm like, wow, they're all Japanese, but I do love Japanese games. I'm a big fan, but I want you guys to definitely leave your top 10 lists down below of your favorite strategy console games that were released on consoles. I'm very, very interested in hearing them and hearing some of the games that you grew up with and love. So anyways, guys, until next time.